Yes, it's Monday morning, and what else would we be discussing rather than PSV Eindhoven 2, Ajax 2? And we're going to have to break this down in stages, David, because it felt like already, even just a few games into the season, as if this was a huge game for both sides. Twice PSV took the lead, twice Ajax equalised. That doesn't really tell us half of it. Who do you think is the happier on this Monday morning from the two camps?
All right, I was going to say, I think the happiest this morning is probably Feyenoord.
Yes. That is the correct answer.
I think you'd have to say Ajax, to be honest with you, this morning. I think if you look at the grand scheme of things, I'd probably say, look, let's. I think we need to look at where the Dutch season's at, coming even before. Ajax out of the big three, the traditional big three, I'd say Ajax are probably the weakest. I think we have to say that, and where they are. So by that, they have to be the happiest here, I think, with the result, and I think it probably gives them a little shot in the arm moving forward as well, and perhaps goes well for Heitinga, in his methods and what he's trying to get across. He'll see this as kind of, getting one over in terms of just saying to the players, look, this is what we're trying to achieve here, moving forward. But there is a lot to improve upon for Ajax and both sides in general.
Yeah, I mean, we had Lars this time last week trying to push us into OTC merchandise with Make Juventus Fun Again. I think Heitinga could be marketing his own range of caps for the less hairy of Amsterdam men. Make Ajax watchable again. And this was a good step in that direction, I think. Maybe that's not the ultimate aim of the season. And we'll talk about how Ajax have evolved over the summer and into the start of this season. But yeah, let's do a quick tale of the tape. So the game started a little bit later than it was meant to because of so many fireworks, which meant the players came out, they went back into the tunnel. The game started about 10 minutes late, and PSV were at it from the off. If you were trying to distill PSV under Bosch into half an hour, the first half hour of this game, I think, would have been a great example. They really looked the part, and clearly they've had a few little hiccups over the last little while. Of course, they got themselves into a position last season where they shouldn't have won the league, and Ajax inexplicably managed to let them back in. I mean, remember, there was a dual bottling of the title. PSV lost a massive lead once, then Ajax lost a massive lead, and PSV got it back at the end. But then really the penalty, and it was really carelessly given away by Serginho Dest, got Ajax back into it, with Kenneth Taylor scoring it. And from that point, I thought Ajax had a much, much better second half. Nevertheless, PSV end up taking the lead again. Gaziorowski gets his free header in the last 10 minutes. You think that's that. But really, I think when you look at how Ajax changed in this second half, was there a more key player than Oscar Gloukh? Of course, came across from Salzburg in the summer, is being gradually bled into the Ajax lineup. And when they took off their proper, in inverted commas, striker, Kasper Dolberg, who didn't quite look at it and picked up a thigh injury in the first half, replaced by Gloukh at half-time. Gloukh has not played as a centre-forward before, he said afterwards. And Ajax playing without a proper centre-forward really worked for them, and that goal that he got at the end was, I think, just reward for what was a really, really good second half by him.
He was really inspirational. I'd probably say he was the best player on the pitch, and he really,
agreed.
Yeah, he really livened things up. And you can see why there's a few people saying, why doesn't he start games? And I don't think Heitinga's been using them correctly as well. I know he's been situated out wide when he has played, but this was more, again, due to the lack of options. I think he's gone up front, and then he's also played as a 10 as well. So basically he needs to play through the middle. I think out wide he's a little bit underutilised, but he was excellent. Really just wanted to get hold of the ball, wanted to make things happen, and nobody else seemed really capable of doing that. None of his teammates seemed to be capable of doing that, and he seemed to play without a bit of fear, basically. So yeah, I was really impressed with him, and you have to say, needs to start next game.
Yeah, and maybe this is a bit of a departure for Ajax, if you think about it, because if you look at where they were in the first half, and you go back to the first half where they have 29% of possession. PSV, as we say, completely dominate that first half hour, and Gloukh is so different to what else they have. So, of course, Wout Weghorst not available for this game through injury, and then Dolberg goes off at half-time, having not looked that comfortable. And all of a sudden, when Glauch's involved, Mika Hertz is more involved, coming in off the left wing. And finally, Ajax look as if they're properly playing football. Now, I don't know if this is something. Obviously, Heitinga has received a bit of heat for the way they've played so far. Of course, this is the third game in which they've dropped points out of 6 so far. So 3 wins, 3 draws. They're as yet unbeaten, but it's all about keeping pace in the title race. Of course, it's not just about the numbers. But we're used to seeing an Ajax, and partly this is due to financial reasons, of course, but under Francesco Farioli, who was massively appreciated by the supporters there when he left, and they gave him so much credit, most of them, for catching up with PSV and becoming competitive with PSV again. But the football was pretty ugly for a lot of last season.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about them playing, I guess, in a more Ajax way, perhaps Gloukh really is the key player for that.
He is, but the thing is that there isn't much else to play there to allow them to play that Ajax way. We saw last season Farioli really, really copped it in terms of his style. Not the results, because he got the results, and I think there was a lot of credit from Ajax fans for the way that he did it, considering what he was given to work with. Farioli was smart, and he said, look, this is what I've got, so this is the way we're going to have to play it. Henderson playing extremely deep, for instance, was a key part of this. He acknowledged that Ajax weren't strong in defence, and he wanted to provide them a bit of security, a bit of safety net. So Henderson played in a deeper role. Now, I'm not seeing anything similar from Heitinga, and it's making Ajax more vulnerable in defence. And I think that's one of the big issues here. Heitinga's trying to, while still being very, very safe, again, due to the lack of resources that he got, he is just playing a little bit more open, and teams can penetrate Ajax quite easily in their current setup. And there's a few players in there who are, still passengers. I know he's the number 10, but Klaassen, I'm not too sure what he's doing there. I thought he was absolutely dreadful.
A hell of a hair transplant, though. You have to say that.
Yeah,
and of course, if he'd have scored yesterday, he would have equalled Luis Suarez for the guy who scored the most against PSV in the 21st century, which, firstly makes you realise how explosive Luis Suarez was when he was there, and secondly makes you realise what a long time ago it was. But what do we think about that, David? Like the idea that on one hand you've got to provide success at Ajax, and on the other hand there's this cultural pressure to do it in a certain way. I mean, I think that cultural pressure is actually more external than it is internal when we think of how the fans felt about Farioli and how they felt about Jordan Henderson until there was that big kerfuffle about the move to Monaco that didn't happen. He was popular with his teammates. He was popular with Farioli, wasn't he? Yeah,
exactly. And it's very hard because Ajax are one of several clubs around Europe, I'd say, who have got a lot of pressure on them to play a certain way. You can obviously say Barcelona's another one. I think Man United have got to play classic like sweeping football like Alex Ferguson used to. So there's several clubs who have got that exterior pressure, or you need to play, you're this club and this is the heritage and you need to play this certain way. But look, football isn't as simple as that. You can't just keep playing the way Ajax can't keep playing the way that Rinus Michels and Johan Cruyff played. That you can't, because things have changed, and look, ultimately, if we're going bigger picture here, Ajax's big mistake was when they got an absolute haul of money for an unbelievable generation of talent. De Ligt, Frenkie de Jongs, was their inability to reinvest it smartly, and that cost them. That's bigger picture, and that's why they are where they are today, in my opinion.
What about the PSV side of it? I mean, bear in mind that they are the champions. They're going for a third successive title. but a very shaky start to the season, and not winning this game after the results against the less glorious names, it's fair to say, of Telstar and Union Saint-Gilloise. This third successive game without winning the Philips Stadion, this means that they are going through their worst run of form at home in 9 years. Now, that shows you how dominant they've been at home in that time, I suppose. But I think it felt to me as if, especially after the Taylor equaliser, the ghost of those games was living in their head a little bit, because they really retreated into themselves. And the football was really good, I thought, in the first half hour. It felt as if it was proper, bold, Bosch football. And the best player on the pitch in that time, by the way, Ivan Perisic.
Yeah, I mean, he's drinking from a fountain of youth, isn't he, man? He just, there's honestly, the past few years, I'm like, has he become actually a better, he's one of those players, like, has he become an actual better player as he's got old? The old Aris Adarith thing at Athletic Club, basically, just somebody going post 33, 34, just suddenly turned into an absolute animal of a player. And he just been absolutely fantastic, he really has. And there's going to be a bit more pressure on him, because I thought another key juncture in this game was Van Bommel going off injured and moving forward. Yeah, if that injury, I think I read comments after from Bush, and he said it's a bit worse than feared and it doesn't look good. If he's out for a fairly lengthy amount of time, then PSV will be very, very concerned, I think, and there's going to be more pressure on a guy in Perisic who basically shouldn't be, having pressure at this stage of his career. He should be just a nice compliment to your side.
Yeah, he should be. I mean, this is the fifth assist of the season so far already. I mean, he was popping up on the right and on the left later once Van Bommel went off. I mean, the craft is absolutely undisputed. It's funny, like, if we go back to the start of the summer, and I don't want to get us in a big Marcus Rashford conversation, but it was clear that the player that Barcelona needed as backup to Rafinha and Lamine Yamal was Perisic. And in the end, they spent so long trying to get it together, which should have been quite a simple signing, of course, when he was on a free, that he ended up re-upping with PSV instead, because Perisic was keen on the move, as you would be. And in terms of, someone making, 20 starts a season and coming on to make an impact, he would have been absolutely perfect for them. I mean, it's funny when you're talking about the fountain of youth there and getting better as you're getting deeper into your 30s. Maybe it's a Croatian thing. Look at Luka Modric, who got better after his Ballon d'Or from 2018. He's still out there doing it for Milan at 40 years old. But, he would have made a massive difference for Barcelona, no?
Yeah, I think so. I honestly think that the quality, just from the evidence of where he's shown the past few years, as he's got older, I think he could have still played at a higher level, with all due respect to the Eredivisie. I still think he could have played at a higher level, and like you said, the Liga, I don't know, maybe even a Premier League move, I don't know. He's just got so much craft, guile, quality, and he's one of those players who's, has despite certain things declining in his game and in age coming in, he's become more wily and crafty elsewhere. And the level of creativity in his game now is far removed from where it was, say, 8 years ago, 8 years ago or so.
Yeah, and I think you're right as well in that him and Ruben van Bommel worked perfectly together as well. If you think his craft on one side and the cut and thrust of Van Bommel on the other, he started his PSV career absolutely brilliantly, but yeah, he did go down with that injury, and the stadium hushed pretty quickly. It was a non-contact injury. It looked like his knee wobbled as his foot planted in terms of, we don't want to speculate, but in terms of how bad it might be, and he's quite distressed quite quickly. There were lots of shots, weren't there, on the TV cameras of Mark, his dad, watching on. And then all of a sudden, the camera went back there and Mark wasn't there anymore, which presumably meant he was going down to the dressing room to see what the damage was. But, I think sometimes we expect players of a famous stock to be like their dads, but he couldn't be less like Mark Van Bommel, could he? He's quick and he's dashing, he's direct, and all of a sudden, PSV have got a massive problem, not just because Ruben van Bommel's been absolutely brilliant since he's arrived, but if you look at the injury in the week to Myron Boadu, who would have been first backup, look at the injury to Alassane Player, who was one of their big signings in the summer, and he won't come back until New Year. What happens to an ultra-attacking team when they're shorn of all their attacking players?
Yeah, this is a big problem for them because, I mean, look, the way that Van Bommel has adapted since coming in has been incredible. And look, it was quite a big ask to replace Bakayoko, and in terms of, you know, what he provided for PSV for the past couple of years and how exciting he was. I think it's very difficult. They might have to look to the academy, and it might literally be that. Because, look, we know the lack of resources about here in Eredivisie for certain clubs, even the bigger clubs. So it might be a case of that. Because I can't see Bosch completely switching up the system at this point because I'm losing Van Bommel. Somebody will have to come in basically and step up.
Well, he's had enough opportunities to do that over the years, and of course it is that famous phrase of his when he was at Borussia Dortmund, plan B is to do plan A better, which always sticks with me, and I don't think I can get through a pod on Peter Bosch without mentioning that. But I do kind of wonder if these injuries are a bit of a get-out for him, because if you look at PSV, and I'm not just talking about this home run at the moment, but if you look at them player for player, they've got the best set of players in the Eredivisie. There's no question about that. They've got far better players than Feyenoord. They've definitely got far better players than Ajax at the moment. So look, I know Bosch plays in a certain way. He's almost a zealot in terms of that. But if I don't know, I would say at the start of the season, before we get to these injuries, what is the excuse for not winning the league and not progressing in Europe with this set of players? Because by Dutch standards, it's a really good squad.
I don't think there are any excuses. I think they've been very lucky in terms of how they have replaced and who they have brought in, and they are in a position, as you've mentioned, that they have probably got the strongest squad in Eredivisie. Despite Dutch football being in a weird position where none of the big three are particularly great, and they're all we saw last year. It's a case of taking advantage of a slip up by one of your rivals. I mean, you know, a lot of people said about Ajax's squad last year, this is one of their worst squads, but they managed to get there or thereabouts. So we could see a repeat of that, because like I said at the start, I think they're the weakest out of the big three. Feyenoord probably lack a striker for me. To run away with it. But yeah, PSV should be in position. I'm not too sure what the excuses would be. You would not have any. You would perhaps say, look, say Van Bommel is injured for quite some time, and they slip off due to that, then maybe that's one of your excuses. You say, oh, we lost a very key part of our attack who was coming in to replace another key part of our attack. That might be it for him.
And that is the thing. I guess there's so much pressure on the players who are remaining, like Perisic, like Ismail Saibari, who scored the opener from the Perisic cross. But Saibari is a really gifted footballer who will miss chances. I think that's the issue there, isn't it? I looked at this and I just wondered, I mean, presumably, if we're going back to Portugal for a little minute, one of the surprise signings of the summer was Luke de Jong to Porto. I mean, maybe him and Francesco Farioli is now coach. We're watching this together yesterday. Who knows? I wonder what they thought about it. And I wonder if Luke de Jong looked at it and thought, I'm a guy who, like, you know, people don't believe I'm like absolutely A+ elite level, and maybe I'm not, but I always score big goals in big games. He must have been having a look and thinking that, surely.
Yeah, honestly, it's classic. I remember watching when he was at Sevilla, and I was just like, he looks like a player who looks a bit lost and who isn't going to score, but he always managed to pop up with a goal out of nowhere. And yeah, look, he'd have a lot of fun in that Ajax side right now, or PSV or Feyenoord. Anyway, he'd have a lot of fun in that league right now. Basically, yeah, he'd be easily one of the better players in that league.
Yeah, and I guess, though, with these injuries at PSV, particularly in the attacking area, obviously it doesn't bode well for their Champions League chances. But is there an opportunity for Ajax, and is there an opportunity for Heitinga now? Because if I'm Heitinga, like you said at the top, I'm coming out of that game thinking, OK, it felt beforehand that neither team could drop points. Now, the edge is slightly taken off that by the fact that Feyenoord lost their 100% record directly after that yesterday. They conceded that 97th minute equaliser at RZ, which means they're no longer on maximum points. They've got 5 wins and a draw, 3 points clear at the top of Ruben van Persie's team. But I think if you're Ajax, you look at the injuries to PSV and you look at the way you played in the second half, you come out of that thinking, OK, well, maybe we're not looking brilliant in the Champions League, but in an Eredivisie sense, maybe we can do something. There's an opportunity for Heitinga to build over the next month or two, no?
There absolutely is, and I think, look, there's been a little pressure to start the season. Like I said, this takes the weight off a little bit, releases the pressure, and he can probably look at the next month or so now and just say, right, we just need to focus on working on these bits that aren't working. Like I said, I still think, from an organisational point of view, I thought they were an absolute mess. They're very, very open, like I said, but you've got time to work on that now, and he can look at that. And in a month's time, I would expect, and this is despite the squad limitations that we've mentioned, them to be in a much better place and a bit more of an organised unit, and we know a bit more about Ajax and what their current identity is under Heitinga.
Yeah, that's right. They just need to sort that defence out. Of course, Jarl Hato went in the summer to Chelsea, and then you look at Schüttler not starting yesterday. It doesn't feel as if they've come to a point where they really realise what their best defence is. So maybe that's part of the aim if they're starting to get what's going on at the front of the team sorted out. Well, great game. More questions than answers, perhaps, but we're going to keep a close eye on the Eredivisie in the coming weeks. Thank you for listening to On the Continent. I'll be back with Dotton and Miguel Delaney this Thursday. In the meantime, make sure to subscribe in your podcast app so that you never miss an episode.